spectator cheering on friends, a volunteer helping out a first-time runner, every person came to the marathon for their own reasons, and each person reacted to yesterday's violence in their own personal way. Earlier today, we listened to 3 people's stories, including a mother injured as she waited for her daughter.
We were waiting for our daughter to complete the marathon. Since she was a sophomore in high school, the top of her list goal was to run the Boston Marathon because she's a little person and people and her, I mean, she was born to run. That was her goal. She was at 25.7, just about to come in, and when the second bomb went off, there was more mayhem than the first bomb. I think people really realized something was going on. People started running, and there was a stampede pretty much, so it was just knocked to the pavement. My initial thing was trying to get into my head that this is real. This is not a movie. And trying to not lose it.
I had just crossed the 26-mile marker and was looking at the finish line, and that's a happy sight. It's usually the happiest sight for a marathon runner. And I got into about 26.1 when I heard a loud explosion. And a second after that, I saw the building blow out. But it didn't register what that was going on. They went off one and then the other, and they was here, and I was right back here. Everyone knew it was probably going to hit where we were standing. So I just kept thinking, this is horrible, but I kept thinking, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt, because you knew you were next. Scared to death. Then a police officer came over and started yelling, get back, and then he said, get away from the trash cans, get away from the trash cans.
So I was having a tough day, and I was walking toward the end of the race, and all of a sudden the police erected barricades on the road in front of us. And as I approached the barricade, I came up to a cop, and he told me that there had been bombs that went off at the finish line. I was very upset because I knew my wife was ahead of me, and I knew she would be very close to the finish line at that time. But as I just cut the barricade and we were directed to go to the Boston Commons, she was coming backwards on the course and found me. You know, for a second I was upset and disappointed I wasn't going to finish the marathon. This was my 19th Boston Marathon, and I was going to be upset that I didn't get to cross the finish line. But when she came up, that's all that mattered. You know, that put it into perspective, and that was all that mattered. That she was safe and we were safe and we were together, and that was all that was important.
Some great stories. All right, well, I'm joined now by Haider Warach. He wrote a powerful op-ed in today's New York Times about his reaction to yesterday's events and being reminded of the violence in his native Pakistan. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Emily.
So tell the story, as you did in the paper today. You were having lunch with your family.
So I was actually post-call, so I'd worked the night.
I should say you're a surgeon.
I'm a resident in medicine in the Beth Israel Deaconess.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the teaching hospitals here in Boston, and working nowadays in the medical ICU. Mm-hmm. And I was post-call, so I'd worked the night before, and I'd gone done with work around noon. And after I came back, I felt like I should take my wife out to downtown so that we can watch the marathon and be part of the festivities. And we were there, and we were actually having food at the Prudential Center, the food court. When we first heard this dull sort of rumble, and I don't think any of us really processed what had happened. And then this was followed by just a cacophony of noise, just a cascade of people running. And there was a loud, very loud clanging sound that I don't know what it was, but it sounded like gunfire. Mm. And my first instinct was that there was some sort of shooter on the loose.
You started thinking of Newtown and Aurora.
Of course, all those things came to my mind in milliseconds. And so my first instinct was to just get out of that closed space. And so I just yelled at my wife, who was with me, and I just told her, just duck and run. And we just ducked and we ran for the terrace that's actually opens up to Boylston Street. And so we were then on Boylston Street, and what we saw there was even worse. At this point, mind you, no one knew what was going on. People were shaking, crying, screaming. And out on Boylston Street, we could see smoke. We didn't have a direct angle of where the bomb had actually gone off. And I think we had a few seconds to sort of calm our nerves there, and before cops came in and basically made us go in the opposite direction, which is back into the food court, which, as you can imagine, was somewhere that I was scared to sort of go back to. But we ended up going into the food court, and then we had to exit to the other side.
And you said that you did think about growing up in your native Pakistan, but it was different. The thoughts kind of came in.
So, I mean, so just to sort of give background, I've grown up and lived in Pakistan. I went to medical school there, and I pretty much went through some of the worst times. When Benazir Bhutto was assassinated, we were still in medical school. I remember that day. It was a day of complete chaos. We went outside, and we were standing on the roof of our dormitories as we basically saw pretty much the whole city burn, and cars were left.
This is Karachi?
Yes, this is in Karachi. And then back home in Rawalpindi, which is where I'm from, I was there when the attacks on the headquarters of the military happened. And I was in my room, and we didn't sleep all night. And we could hear bombs go off. We could hear choppers. The trees and were all shaking. And none of us knew what was going on. So having lived through those...
It was the same kind of looks on people's faces?
It was very different. I think what was really different was the fact that we were really in the middle of it. We were I think the stampede was something that I have never seen. And as I wrote in the piece, none of those experiences prepared me for this, because this was not Karachi, this was not Rawalpindi, this was Boston, and this was Patriots Day, this was a marathon, and this was my third marathon that I've been to. So none of that really prepared me for what I saw. As far as the question of how it was different, I think people in Pakistan and I'm sure in similar places like Afghanistan and Iraq, at some level they've been dehumanized and desensitized to all these events. I mean,
this is a first.
I would, to be perfectly honest to you, 2 people dying in Karachi would not even make the front page. It just wouldn't. But the fact that it happened here, the fact that it was targeted to maximize attention, maximize terror, just pure terror, was something that I was not prepared for.
One of the most poignant points you made in your op-ed today was that you thought instantaneously, because you weren't dressed like this, you had a stubble, you weren't off-duty, they could be looking at me. I fit the stereotype, I fit the prototype of what somebody may be looking for.
I think when you're a 20-something young male from Pakistan, the moment you enter the United States, you know you have to be careful. And during that moment, initially I was just awash with fear. I had pretty much all my senses were down to binary levels, and but then after when the fear sort of gave way to sort of a more sort of cerebral sort of thinking, that is exactly what I thought. And other people that I spoke to who were of a similar origin, who were in that area, when I spoke to them in the morning, they hadn't read the piece, and I hadn't told them that I'd written about this. That was the first thing that they said. One of my friends was actually in the mall, and he had a big camera and he had a backpack, and he was really, really scared, and that was exactly the first thing that crossed his mind, that could I be a suspect, and those thoughts were with me as I sort of left the perimeter, as I had to make all sorts of things.
Because at what point did it ever cross your mind? You said, I should really go help these people. You didn't even know what had happened, but did it ever cross your mind? Wait a second, I'm a physician. I'm in the neighborhood. I should go see. But I know you were with your wife and child.
So just I was with my wife I would be lying to say that my first priority was to make sure that I just get her to a safe place. And as soon as I was able to do that, given my training, I felt where I would be most useful, and I called my colleagues in the medical ICU at the Beth Israel, and I asked. And by this time, our institution had already started rolling out emails and had started triaging people and identifying needs. And I was told to be on standby, and then most of the volume went to the surgical services, the emergency services. So they didn't call me in primarily because there were other services that were more heavily involved, and B, I hadn't slept in almost 2 days.
Yeah, true. Hmm.
But those thoughts definitely crossed my mind. I didn't, to be honest.
When did you think about writing? And did you have a relationship with the New York Times? How did that come about?
So as far as the New York Times is concerned, I'm in the process of actually publishing a piece that's coming out this Sunday, which is on a completely different topic. That was more to do with palliative care and end-of-life care.
But you had an in with them.
Sort of. Yeah. I think that definitely gave me confidence to at least.
Yeah.
What happened is that after we came back and we spent the whole day at home just watching TV, just sort of coming to grips with what had happened. When I was about to retire, my wife, who's also a writer, she told me that, Heather, you have to write about this. And she said that you have to write about this, not just for yourself, but all those other people who probably felt the same way.